This is you. You are 400 meters below the surface of the Pacific Ocean, and something just turned off the lights. Not your lights. The ocean's lights. The bioluminescent glow that has been pulsing faintly through the water since you descended past the twilight zone. The glow that the research team told you was normal, ambient, and safe, just blinked out. All of it, at once, as if every living thing in the water column simultaneously decided to go dark. Your dive suit's headlamp cuts a cone of visibility about 12 meters ahead. Beyond that, the blackness is so total it has texture, like pressing your face into velvet. And from somewhere below you, rising through the water column with a patience that makes your blood cold, something is following you up. You cannot see it, but you can feel it. A pressure change against your suit. A displacement of water that your instruments register as a thermal shadow, something large enough to push the current sideways as it moves. Your ascent rate is locked at 9 meters per minute. Safety protocol. If you rise faster, the nitrogen in your blood will expand and kill you before whatever is below you gets the chance. So you hang in the void, rising slowly, watching your depth gauge tick upward, one agonizing meter at a time. And every 30 seconds, the thermal shadow below you gets closer. 6 hours earlier, you were standing on the deck of the research vessel Leviathan, a converted deep-sea mining support ship now operated by a private oceanic survey company called Bathyal Corp. You are a commercial dive technician. Your job is maintaining undersea sensor arrays, replacing corroded housings, and occasionally retrieving equipment that the ROVs cannot reach because their arms lack the dexterity of human hands. The pay is extraordinary. The danger is real. And the non-disclosure agreement you signed before boarding was thicker than your dive manual. Today's task was simple on paper. Descend to Sensor Node 7, located at 380 meters on the edge of an abyssal shelf. Replace a failed acoustic transponder and return to the diving bell. Total bottom time, 40 minutes. You have done similar dives dozens of times. The depth is aggressive, but within the operational limits of your saturation system. Your breathing mix was helium-oxygen, your suit was rated to 600 meters, and your backup systems had backup systems. The only thing that worried you was the briefing room. 3 engineers sat in the back row and never spoke. They wore Bathyal Corp badges, but their eyes had the hollow, sleepless quality of people who have seen something they were told not to discuss. When you asked the lead engineer about the failure mode, he said equipment fatigue, standard degradation. Then he left the room without making eye contact. What nobody told you was why the transponder actually failed. The dive briefing mentioned equipment fatigue, standard degradation. Nothing unusual. But when you reached the bottom and floated toward the sensor node, you saw something that the briefing did not prepare you for. The transponder housing was not corroded. It was crushed, compressed inward from the outside, as though something had wrapped around it and squeezed. The titanium frame, rated to withstand pressures far beyond this depth, had buckled like aluminium foil. Deep parallel grooves ran along the surface of the housing, each one precisely spaced, each one about 4 centimeters apart. You reported the damage on the top side. There was a long pause. Then the dive supervisor told you to replace the unit and ascend immediately. That was the first time his voice sounded wrong. You swapped the transponder in 12 minutes. Efficient, professional, hands steady, even though the grooves in the crushed housing looked less like mechanical failure and more like something had gripped the device, studied it, and decided it did not want to be listened to. Then you began your ascent. The first 40 meters were routine. You followed the guide wire, monitored your gas mix, and let the diving bell reel you upward at the prescribed rate. The water around you was cold and black and empty, which is normal at this depth. Life is sparse near the abyssal zones. Most of what exists down here is small, translucent, and completely uninterested in divers. Then your headlamp caught something at the edge of its range. A shape, massive, vertical, hanging in the water column like a pillar. It was not moving. You adjusted your lamp angle to get a better look, but by the time the beam swept back, It was gone. Nothing on sonar. Nothing on the thermal feed, just black water. You reported it topside. The supervisor said it was probably a thermocline mirage, a common visual distortion caused by layered water temperatures at depth. He told you to continue ascending. 20 meters later, you saw it again. Closer. This time, it was not a pillar. It had geometry, limbs, or extensions, radiating outward from a central mass that your brain refused to calculate a size for because the size did not make sense. It was too large to be a single organism. It occupied too much of your field of vision for the distance your instruments said it was at. It was watching you, not with eyes, necessarily, but with orientation. Its entire mass was angled toward you the way a satellite dish angles toward a signal. Then every bioluminescent organism in the water went dark simultaneously, and the thermal shadow appeared on your instruments, below you, rising. Not fast, not slow, rising at exactly your ascent rate, matching you. You radioed topside and told them something was following you and you needed an emergency ascent clearance. The supervisor denied it. He said accelerating the ascent at this depth would cause decompression sickness that would paralyze or kill you before you reached the bell. He told you to maintain the rate and trust the protocol. Then, he said something that made you grip the guide wire so hard your gloves creaked. This has happened before. It follows, but it does not take, as long as you do not stop. As long as you do not stop. You asked what it was. Static. You asked again. The line went dead. Not dead, like disconnected. Dead and silenced. As though someone topside had deliberately cut your communication feed. You are alone now. 400 meters of water above you. Unknown depth of darkness below you. Your headlamp is the only light in a column of ocean that feels less like water and more like the inside of a throat. The silence is not empty, it is full. Full of pressure, full of mass, full of the weight of every cubic meter of salt water between you and the sky. You have never felt so small. You have never felt so watched. The thermal shadow is 50 meters below and closing. Your suit's external pressure sensor begins registering anomalies. Microcompressions pulsing against your body at irregular intervals. It feels like something is breathing on you from every direction at once. The water around you is getting warmer, which should not happen during an ascent. The temperature should drop. Your gas mix readout begins fluctuating as though the composition of the water itself is changing. At 300 meters, your backup camera activates automatically. It is a rear-facing unit mounted on your shoulder, designed to record equipment inspections. The live feed displays on a small screen inside your helmet. You glance at it. Behind you, in the farthest reach of the camera's infrared mode, you see it. Not a shape, not a silhouette, a surface, a wall of biological matter stretching wider than your camera can capture, rising through the water column directly below you. It is textured, ridged, covered in structures that could be scales or could be eyes, or could be something your visual cortex has no category for. It is close enough that the water displaced by its movement is physically pushing your legs upward. You are not ascending anymore. You are being lifted. Your depth gauge continues to tick upward, but the guide wire has gone slack. You are moving faster than the reel. Something beneath you is carrying you toward the surface on its own schedule. At 200 meters, the water changes color. From black to deep blue, the first photons of sunlight are reaching this depth. And in that faint blue light, you see your own shadow projected downward. Below your shadow, covering the entire visible span of the ocean beneath you, is a single eye. Open, unblinking, iridescent, in a way that shifts between colors your suit camera cannot process. It is looking at you the way a person looks at a word they are trying to read. At 150 meters, the diving bell comes into view above you. The hatch is open. The interior lights are on. Safety, warmth, pressurized atmosphere, 30 seconds away. The thermal shadow stops. The pressure pulses stop. The warmth in the water stops. Whatever carried you here has decided to let go. You grab the guide wire with both hands and haul yourself the final distance into the bell. You slam the hatch. You seal it. You collapse onto the metal floor and breathe so hard the inside of your helmet fogs completely. The bell begins its automated ascent to the ship. Through the porthole, you watch the blue water brighten as you rise toward the surface. Nothing follows. The instruments read clean. The thermal shadow is gone. The pressure is normal. When the bell is recovered onto the deck of the Leviathan, you are met not by the dive supervisor, but by 3 people in suits you have never seen before. They do not introduce themselves. They do not ask how you are. One of them takes your helmet camera. Another removes your suit data logger. The third hands you a tablet and says one sentence. Describe what you saw, and you will be paid 8 times your contract. Describe it to anyone else, and the contract becomes something different. You sign. Your hand is steady, because your hand has learned to lie, even when the rest of you cannot. The helicopter that takes you to the mainland is silent. Nobody speaks. The pilot keeps checking his instruments as though expecting something to appear on the radar that should not be there. Below the aircraft, the Pacific stretches in every direction, blue and bright and hiding everything. 2 weeks later, you are home. The money has arrived. Your brother's tuition is paid. Your mother's bills are cleared. Life returns to normal, or something close to it. Except for one thing. Every night at exactly 2 a.m., you wake up. Not from a nightmare, from a sensation. Pressure against your chest. Rhythmic. Pulsing. Like something enormous. Thousands of miles away, at the bottom of an ocean you will never dive again, is still breathing in your direction. And every morning, when you check the news feeds, there is a new report about a sensor array failure somewhere in the Pacific. Crushed housing, parallel grooves, 4 centimeters apart,